Out of the 7.5 billion people on the planet, less than 3,000 are billionaires, and only half of those are self-made. Now that's about 0.00004% of the population. Amassing a fortune of a few $1 billion is no easy task. And our story in this video is about one of those very few who managed to do it. Ray Dalio is an American hedge fund manager whose controversial methods have shaped an entire industry, whose understanding of the macro picture was adopted by many companies, and whose best-selling book was titled The Gospel of Radical Transparency. Today, we're going to explore how Dalio came from humble beginnings to being listed on the top 100 wealthiest people alive in 2020, hoping that his story might inspire the latent billionaire inside you and spur you onto doing something massive. Stay tuned to know how Dalio started investing as early as 12 years old and how punching his boss in the face changed the course of his life to ultimately make him a billionaire. Raymond Thomas Dalio was born in 1949, Queens, New York. His father was a jazz musician and his mother was a homemaker. Ray was their only child. As a kid, Dalio didn't like school much. He found it difficult to remember facts or follow instructions, and liked to go on adventures and gain hands-on experience from trying new things himself, rather than reading about them in books. He didn't mind making mistakes and facing the music. As long as he learned something new, it was worth it. These small but many experiences would pile up to eventually make him one of the most respected minds in the fields of finance and management. Dalio began to learn about investment at 12 years old, when he had a job at an exclusive golf club, carrying around the bags and clubs of players who were investors or stockbrokers in Wall Street. He would hear everyone talk about the stock market, and his eyes would glisten with ambition when he learned about people who made hundreds of thousands of dollars in one day. He gained a general understanding of the trade and picked up tips for hot stocks while on the job. Month after month, he saved his wages until he had $300, which he used to buy shares in Northeast Airlines, a company he heard a lot about from brokers and investors. Dalio got extremely lucky with this tiny investment as Northeast Airlines merged with another company, and he managed to triple his $300. This profit left him wanting more. Young Ray thought that trading in the stock market was an easy way to make money hand over fist. He continued to invest in stocks through high school and managed to make thousands of dollars in profit, and regularly studied annual reports of Fortune 500 companies, gaining knowledge that would later be essential in building his empire. In 1967, though, there was a huge decline in stock prices, and the 18-year-old, inexperienced Dalio didn't know when to stop. He kept buying stocks whose prices continued to decline, and lost a lot of money. A lesson that cost a lot, but he learned that the future won't always unfold as he expects it. Due to not being interested in school and spending most of his time between different jobs and investing in stocks, Dalio's grades weren't enough to get him to college. However, he managed to make it to Long Island University on probation and studied finance there. He excelled in college as he was studying something he'd been passionate about since childhood and that he could apply in summer jobs. He received his bachelor's degree in finance and went on to get an MBA from the esteemed Harvard Business School. Dalio had a few jobs over the summer vacations during college. He worked on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, spending his time learning about the currency market and studying the cause-effect relationships that lead to alternating prices. The following summer, he got a job at Merrill Lynch, trading commodities futures, a field which he became interested in because of its low margin requirements, which meant he could invest in bigger amounts and make substantial profits. After graduating from Harvard, Dalio worked for a brokerage called Dominick & Dominick as a director of commodities. Due to his extensive experience in the field, he ended up founding a commodities division for the company. After a successful run, he left Dominick & Dominick for a bigger firm, Shearson, where he was put in charge of the futures hedging business. He helped clients manage price risks in their businesses through the use of futures, which gave him the opportunity to learn about grain and livestock. However, he only lasted a year at Shearson, as he got fired after he went out to a drink with his boss, got into a disagreement, and punched him in the face. As he told the story in hindsight, he thought that he was too wild to stay at Shearson for long anyway. While he worked at Dominic and Shearson, he didn't stop his own private investments. He continued winning and losing money in the stock exchange, gaining the needed knowledge that later would help him set up one of the most valuable companies in the world. Here's a piece of advice from Ray Dalio on investing in stocks and trading commodities. In trading, you have to be defensive and aggressive at the same time. If you're not aggressive, you're not going to make money. And if you're not defensive, you're not going to keep it. Dalio was admired and respected by all his colleagues. So in 1975, at the age of 26, and after leaving Shearson, he convinced them to have him as their consultant and established Bridgewater Associates in his 2-bedroom apartment. The name came from the original purpose of the company. He intended to trade commodities between the US and foreign countries. Hence, his company was Bridging the Waters. However, the company evolved to become a prominent consultancy firm. Dalio was an utter genius when it came to creating patterns and predicting trends, giving his clients unparalleled insight on the stock market and the demand of commodities. This is how he anticipates the supply and demand rate of different goods in his own words. By knowing how many cattle, chickens, and hogs were being fed, how much grain they ate, and how fast they gained weight, I could project both when and how much meat would come to the market and when and how much corn and soy meal would be consumed. Likewise, by seeing how much acreage was planted with corn and soybeans in all of the growing areas, doing regressions that showed how rainfall affected the yields in each of these areas and applying weather forecasts and rainfall data, I could project the timing and the quantity of corn and soybean production. Clients paid serious money to acquire his macro observations, and his insights yielded them invaluable returns. One of his biggest clients was the world-famous restaurant chain, McDonald's. The restaurant's management sought Dalio's consult before they released their Chicken McNugget product. They were first reluctant to add the item to their menu due to fluctuating chicken prices, hence the difficulty of selling it at a fixed price. Now, Dalio applied his cause and effect principles and concluded that the volatility of chicken cost was due to the price of feed. And by pointing out the problem clearly, they were able to find effective solutions. Thanks to Ray Dalio, we can order the finger-licking delicious McNuggets. However, his glory was short-lived. Between 1979 and 1981, the US economy showed dire markers, and the future seemed to be grim. In March 1981, Dalio made a prediction of a severe depression, which he published in a controversial paper. He invited his associates to find flaws in his theory, but none were found. He was confident in his claim and made many public appearances talking about his predictions, but surprisingly, he almost lost everything because of this. What happened was, in his words, the stock market began a big bull run, and over the next 18 years, the US economy enjoyed the greatest non-inflationary growth period in its history. In the field of stocks, making a bad prediction doesn't only mean you were wrong. It means losing the confidence of your clients and some serious money. In retrospect, Dalio surprisingly says that this was the best thing that ever happened to him. The spirit of the curious schoolboy who loved learning from his mistakes was still alive in him, and he viewed the whole thing as a huge learning experience. After this blunder, he had to release his employees, sell his possessions, and borrow money from family members. However, the idea of giving up was out of the question. He started recruiting intelligent and independent associates to challenge his way of thinking, slowly rebuilt his company, and regained his client base. From 1981 until today, Bridgewater has grown from a consultancy firm to an investment managing company, and the size of its assets grew exponentially. Its clients evolved from private investors to institutional clients like foreign governments and even central banks. The expansion of his empire was aided by technological advances. As computers were popularized by tech giants in the US and became commercially available, Dalio didn't waste any time before utilizing them. He was one of the first people to develop programs to make financial predictions and create patterns by feeding them information which goes through an algorithm that he devised himself. This gave his company the ability to take on much more work and get it done swiftly. He moved the headquarters from his apartment in New York City to Connecticut, and as of 2019, his company engages 1,500 employees and manages a staggering sum of $160 billion in assets. This, of course, left Dalio with a few billions to work with himself and made him consistently appear on Forbes' 100 wealthiest men on the planet. In 2011, Dalio began putting less time in his business. He felt that he had made more than enough money and would like to have some time to spend it. So he began the gradual descent that would eventually lead him to stepping down as CEO of the company in 2017 and finding a replacement that would manage the funds. He joined Bill Gates and Warren Buffett's giving pledge, vowing to donate more than half his fortune to charity during his lifetime. And so he did. He donated millions of dollars to foundations which promoted transcendental meditation and sponsored research on the topic. A technique of silent mantra meditation, which he said helped him clear his mind and make the right decisions since college. He also contributed to the National Philanthropic Trust, a charity which specializes in managing large donations. He supported campaigns of polio eradication and gave away millions to New York hospitals. In 2018, Ocean X, an initiative started by the Dalio family, committed $185 million over the course of 4 years to protect the oceans. After taking time off work, philanthropy wasn't the only thing Dalio spent his time on. He wrote his book titled Principles, Life and Work, which was featured in the New York bestsellers and was the most successful in its category on Amazon. As its name suggests, Ray Dalio shares his effective principles which he developed and used over 40 years to obtain staggering results in both professional and personal life. It includes his unconventional methods of corporate management and his groundbreaking philosophies of investment. It was titled The Gospel of Radical Transparency. Definitely a must-read for all you aspiring entrepreneurs out there. Currently, Dalio lives with his wife Barbara in Connecticut, both of whom practice transcendental meditation regularly. They have 4 sons, all of whom are achieving great things, guided by their father's principles and supported by his money. Dalio is a prominent figure of market prediction and economic forecasts, and he will probably continue to be so. In 2019, he proposed a system of reformed capitalism to solve wealth inequality, an issue which he called a national emergency, suggesting the necessity of making resources like good education more accessible. He was also featured on many television programs to make predictions about the state of economy during the unprecedented coronavirus crisis. He expects that the ongoing pandemic is going to cause an economic recession worse than the Great Depression. We're not going back to normal, says Dalio, arguing that once the virus subsides, there are going to be many things that will hinder recovery and that many restructurings need to take place. At the end of this video, we're going to leave you with Dalio's 3 pieces of financial advice that you should follow during the coronavirus spread. Firstly, determine how far your savings can take you in case you lose a major source of income and lead a style of life that will make you survive as long as possible. Secondly, spread your investments across different assets that are guaranteed to perform relatively well regardless of the economic environment, even if it means settling for low returns. Thirdly, and finally, don't try to time the market. To do that, you have to beat the pros, he says, who themselves can't do that well. This was Dalio's advice during these hard times. Whenever there's a major event in economics, Ray Dalio is always in the front line, making accurate predictions, and giving valuable insights. That was it for the story of Ray Dalio, the self-made billionaire, son of a jazz musician, and the manager of the largest hedge fund in history. If you were inspired by his story and enjoyed this video, hit that like button. And for more videos like this, hit that subscribe button and click the bell for notifications. And good luck to all of you out there trying to achieve something great with little resources.